EGOO Drop.
It's actually about two wholes coming together to make each other whole, but in a different way.
The ego is an egg. It's a shell that holds the soul.
Mm-hmm.
So how can it do something? My feelings are hurt because you said what you said, or my feelings hurt because I'm disappointed that I actually realized that I am the cause of something.
An issue between man and woman, because the man is known for anger, and the woman sometimes is known for sadness and sometimes known for anger.
But she's known for being emotional. Guess what? That's worse than having one or the other.
EGOO Drop.
EGOO Drop.
Peace, family. It's Brother Logas.
And Lydell.
And we're here on our new podcast show video called EGOO Drop.
EGOO Drop.
Now, the way that this works is, we have our website, of course, www.eternalrushllc.com, which has all of our services and products dealing with spiritual healing and enlightenment, as well as beauty, wellness, makeup, hairstyling, and all those good things.
Yeah.
And so the videos that we're going to focus on is going in depth or deeper, going into the concepts of the spirituality and even the health side of things as well. Yeah. And essentially the idea is that the deeper that you go and the more that you're allowing your mind to spread and open itself to these new possibilities, the more your ego will drop. It will melt away. Your emotional side will go away so that we can accept the truth and not deal with the misconceptions.
Yep. Because your feelings going to get hurt.
As my feelings get hurt all the time. So we can actually start right there on just feelings getting hurt.
Yeah.
So the only reason why your feelings would get hurt is if your ego was in the way, meaning like your expectations, or what you believe how things are supposed to go or were supposed to be, or sometimes just your lens of what you think is right and wrong can it can skew your perception, which causes disappointments.
Yep. Or your one perception. I guess that's the beginning, is that there are two. And that's why we're here, to show you bars. But there's two perceptions, or perceptions. There we go. Yeah. There's the feminine and the masculine. Or sometimes the masculine and the feminine. Right? What you got?
Well, essentially, we were talking about this actually earlier today, where we were saying that it's not about two halves coming together to make a whole. It's actually about two wholes coming together to make each other whole, but in a different way. So we're saying essentially that I'm a yin and a yang, she's a yin and a yang, and then we come together and we switch one of our yings and one of our yangs, right, with each other. I'll probably have to go into more study and go into deeper thought to figure out if it's the yin or if it's the yang. Right, I'm not sure. But essentially you'll switch with each other to make you're still whole. You're already whole. But by giving your other half that way, why? So you reflect each other.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of trying to work with each other, you actually should be moving together congruently. But that can only happen if your ego is moved out the way.
Yep. Oh, it's something else that we were speaking of today, is the different effects or what the ego may look like when it's being challenged. And in the feminine side of things, or from my perspective, it usually looks like pain. It looks like hurt, tears, or deep sorrow is usually when a feminine ego is being tested. And then from there, we choose how we will apply, either that we acknowledge that the ego doesn't need to exist in the situation, or we say, you know what, I'm giving into this, and now my feelings are hurt. My feelings are hurt because you said what you said, or are my feelings hurt because I'm disappointed that I actually realized that I am the cause of something.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I identify with my emotional side as a feminine part of this relationship, and that I won't always feel anger or other emotions that ego can create.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually the first one is sadness or disappointment. And it's really about where it's directed, is if you'll know if the ego is leading or not. That's what I got.
So it seems like what you're saying is that you're talking about sadness, but you seem like you were more geared towards saying that sadness was the way to somehow overcome the ego or get through the ego, but you didn't give that same credence to anger, though. So what is the difference between those two that you believe it differentiates the two?
Yeah, and maybe you can go in depth with it, but really sadness takes you to the bottom, to the weakest point, to the weakest denominator, and it opens up and cracks. It allows you to crack. And being a female, I'm naturally going to lean and tend to go to my first emotion, which will be emotions, and it's going to be probably sadness.
So cracking. When you say cracking, you're talking about cracking the ego.
Yeah.
Or the ego, or the egg. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So sadness cracks it, but anger, you're saying does not crack it.
Think about it. Think about what anger does. Anger becomes a wall. Anger builds up.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't break down or crush like an egg, like sadness.
Right.
Usually men...
When you cry, they say it's breaking down.
It's breaking down.
Right.
Yes.
Cracking.
But when you get angry, or when your ego sits up and wants to fight for you and guard something that doesn't exist, it's usually looking like the big man.
Mm-hmm.
He tends to even look like he's bigger than the person that it's obtaining or taking over.
Mm-hmm.
But why is that? Because it's standing up, it's building up. It's not breaking down. So that is usually your telltale sign, or your ta-da clue that you might have a big old ego in your way.
Okay, now then, so
with anger.
So when we look at men versus women,
yeah,
I would say that women have a much smaller or thinner egg, right? A thinner ego. Yeah. It's still the ego is still there.
Yeah. Unless you got a really masculine or dominant women, usually theirs can puff up and become big and loud, aggressive. Mm-hmm. The angry black woman. Mm-hmm. That's where usually that type of ego is usually towards her anger. Mm-hmm. Instead of her sadness. Mm-hmm. So her ego identifies with the masculine side most of the time. Mm-hmm. And usually you'll see that because she'll want to feel bigger than she is. The Napoleon complex is when, the Napoleon complex, little people's complex. Mm-hmm. They want to feel bigger. Mm-hmm. And the ego is the same way. Mm-hmm. Anger or aggression wants to feel bigger than what is taking over. Because it's really not that strong. It's just like a bear. It stands up to get as big as possible, but it is very fearful. But it stands up and wants to appear as large and massive to scare you away. But let you match it.
Or to scare the issue away.
Scare the issue, the obstacle, because it does not know. So it just does what it feels protects it. Same thing with the ego. The ego rises
The ego trying to protect itself.
The ego is an egg. It's a shell that holds the soul. So how can it do something but be a transporter? Yeah. It is not, it doesn't hold the knowledge or the power. It holds it, but it doesn't obtain it itself to conquer. Right. It can only puff up and give the illusion that it's under control and that it's taken over and that it is right. But there is no right or wrong. So really from the beginning of it, even standing up, It's wrong, and it's out of order.
Well, there's a right and wrong.
Yeah.
In your world, there's a right and wrong in my world.
Yeah.
But you're correct. There's no right and wrong as far as if you add all the words together per se. It's not necessarily because there's so many perspectives.
Yeah.
But there's still right and wrong in your world, and there's right and wrong in my world. Now, when it comes to dropping the ego,
yeah,
especially for men, and we'll go into another video about why it's so much more important for men to drop it, and not necessarily as important for women to drop it. But it's important to drop this ego so that me as your partner, I can then pick up or your lens of, so I drop my ego so I can, in a sense, pick up her ego, right? So that I can see from your lens,
yes,
right? And be able to get into alignment. That way, it's not just you trying to tell me your side, but I actually can feel and understand your side.
Exactly. Since we speak two different languages.
Mm-hmm. What it requires, from what you seem like you're saying, is because if sadness breaks you down,
yeah,
because everything's as above, so below, and it's a wavelength. In order to rise up, first you got to go down.
Yeah.
Well, in order to jump up high, you got to first bend your knees and then go and then spring up. Mm-hmm. So, in a sense, what it sounds like you're saying is that by me feeling the sadness,
mm-hmm.
right, and going down, right, I'm able to, and it seems like anger, if anger is puffing up, it's going sideways with it. I'm just going straight ahead. So I end up running into the thing that I'm trying to go around in the first place.
Exactly.
Right? I end up tripping over it and banging into it. It makes things even worse.
No matter what.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then it would seem that in order for me to, what you're saying, in order for me to to rise above it,
yeah,
I have to first go within.
You have to go within.
The sadness makes me go within, makes me contemplate.
Yep.
It makes me think about. It makes me go so that I can then come out of my cocoon rejuvenated, rebranded, re-understanding of things, have a whole new lens. When I become sad and I go down, it's just like if I'm dropping my ego.
Yeah.
Right?
You're dropping the egg.
I'm dropping the egg, so then
allowing the soul.
But I'm picking up your ego so I can see where you're coming from. So I have to go down. So the sadness brings me down. So I can go, if I reach down far enough, I can then pick up what it is.
Yeah.
Pick up the ego that you have left for me to see through.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But you got to bend down. You got to reach down. But you can't unless you go into that what we call the sadness.
Yeah.
Right? And I believe that idea of sadness, because it's uncomfortable, we have made it seem, we put a bad stigma on it. Yeah. So then we experience it in a bad way, in a negative way.
Yeah.
When it's really not, not negative or positive.
It's not negative or positive, but we experience something. And that's the point, because your brain needs something to experience for it to create a memory. Mm-hmm. And memories create habits. Memories create life. Memories are the past. Memories connect you. So if this pain is the only thing that creates this mark, writes this letter, creates a file in the only memory that you're going to have and that you're going to pass on and that you had in the past, then I have to feel it. And you're tapping into the feminine, which is emotion. So you got to feel. And then you'll be able to see, which is the masculine. So you got to feel before you actually have sight. Because you have to go low before you actually see that you were at the bottom. Like if you never reached the bottom, how can you look up? You know what I mean? How do you know what's up if you've never been to the bottom? You don't. You have to experience that, and usually emotionally is usually the lack on the masculine side.
Well, you can't experience it if you don't feel it.
Yep.
That's why we have our senses, including the emotional one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to experience the feeling. That's why the feeling is seen. That's why the feeling's there in the first place. So you can experience it and learn from it inwardly.
Yes.
Before the universe forces you to learn it outwardly.
And then see.
And then you're going to still feel it, but it's going to come from the outside. So it's trying to reach you actually ahead of time.
Yeah.
And especially comes in, and this is why relationships or unions are so important.
And not marriages.
or even families to begin with. Having a family, having the mother and the father in the household, having, the grandparents, having the brothers and the sisters, having a close-knit family.
Yeah.
That way you can feel the emotional ups and downs between each other in a safe environment.
Yeah.
So that you can learn from the experience.
Yes.
Drop your ego, break the ego, so that when you go out into the world.
And you're not 30 or 40 years old, you go through 8,000 relationships, and now you're blaming everybody for some shit that you created because it's just your ego and not someone else's.
And that's why we have an issue between man and woman, because the man is known for anger. And the woman sometimes is known for sadness and sometimes known for anger.
But she's known for being emotional.
Emotional.
Guess what? That's worse than having one or the other.
That's
now saying that you're unstable.
Well, that's because it's both, really.
Yeah.
It represents both, and that's the thing about and that's why it's difficult to describe, because the woman actually represents the masculine and the feminine. The feminine is really, and this is like a whole nother video, but the feminine is really it's the emotions with the logical mixed together. The masculine is just the logical.
Yeah. And
then when it comes to the feminine, there's those who are man, it's difficult. It's difficult. Actually, let me bring it back. I'll say the I'll go back. Yes, I'll keep the way it was. The feminine energy is really both.
Okay.
And what's a good example? If you look at an atom.
Yeah.
The atom has its core, and then it has its outward rings.
Yeah.
Right. Inside the core is the neutral, which represents the masculine and the feminine, and then the positive, which represents the feminine.
Yeah.
So there is more in a woman. There's more feminine energy.
Yes.
Right. Or moving feminine energy. I'll say that, right? Because interacting with the masculine, but essentially, it also has that neutral energy, which is in the middle. Yeah. So we can still play that masculine logical side, which is why women are able to in a sense, drop their egos and become the masculine role if necessary.
If necessary.
Right? Yeah. Because they have no problem, playing both roles, because they are both.
Yeah.
Right? They just choose to go on the more feminine side because they have that feminine charge. But that feminine charge is only activated when there's a man around, which is the electron, which it interacts with the proton, not the neutron.
Not the neutron.
Right? So in a sense, the woman is the neutron. She's both.
Yeah. Until
she runs into a man, then she realizes, oh, she can be one.
Yeah. Yes.
So then it gives off the illusion that she's emotional. Yes. When really she's just choosing to be one side of herself. She's really both sides.
Yeah.
She's just choosing one side because you as the man represent the other side.
Exactly.
So she's letting that side go, that logical side go.
Yeah.
But we lack, at least outwardly, we as men, we lack, because we're so visual and so ego driven, we lack the ability to realize that we are also connected to that neutral. Right. Well, so then we end up, from what I see, some of us end up holding on to the ego, and instead of, would think that we're letting it go by trying to imitate the feminine to extreme situations, right? Yes. That's still ego.
It's still ego.
It's still the ego.
Yeah.
Because then what they take with them when they switch over, or take that more feminine role, like the actual feminine female role, when they try to play that role, what they take with them is still this idea that they're imitating. So then it's like everything that they say, they feel is correct. They feel they can act the way they want to act. Feel they can be as emotional as they want to be. But they never learned the lesson of what they was truly supposed to learn.
Yeah.
It was not to become the feminine. It was to understand the feminine.
Exactly. And use it at its rightful time and place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's a good show.
I think so.
We'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this one. Please share, like, subscribe. All things. Go to EternalRushLLC.com and book a session, book a meditation with me,
yes.
book a beauty session.
Yes.
Get your makeup done, get your hair done, get a reading.
Yes.
Get your spiritual tools, hygiene, natural products.
Yes.
Hair products, all these things at EternalRushLLC.com, and we'll catch you on the next episode to help you drop your ego here on EGOO Drop.
EGOO Drop.
Peace.